On behalf of the 502nd Air Base Wing team, we wanted to thank all of the housing residents who recently attended our housing town hall. Hearing your direct feedback enables my team to better facilitate support to you, our residents. There's still a lot of work to be done. We want to ensure accountability, enforce standards, and provide assistance to all of our JBSA families. But I'm proud of our staff and our military housing office for the steps we've taken to increase oversight and advocacy, because no family should ever suffer in silence or fear reprisal for elevating your concerns to me or your chain of command. So thank you again for coming out and expressing your concerns. We are here to support you, our JBSA family. Thank you. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for, Thanks so much for being here tonight. This is our Randolph Town Hall meeting, and it is a pleasure to have you all here, especially this time of year during the holidays. It's a very busy time, very special time for families, but we're grateful that you took the time to come out and talk to us about what is going on in your communities, especially your concerns, things that we need to address as a team, as a housing team, but also things that we can pass on to Hunt. As we go down, I'm going to have our team introduce themselves and where they work. So some of you that might have moved in this summer might not have met some of our team, but we have a great representation across the wing and across our mission partners, to include the medical community, Air Force Civil Engineering Center, one of our major mission partners here at Randolph, the 12th Flying Training Wing, and then of course the 502nd Air Base Wing. So we have all of our civil engineering team, our military family housing reps are here, as well as legal assistants. Trying to think if there's anyone else that I might have missed. PA is here, public affairs. So we did invite some of our partners in the community here, and they are media representatives. They're not broadcasting tonight, so we are filming in the back, and that'll go on Facebook in about 24 to 48 hours. So if you're not comfortable with your name or your address being on a public social media forum, please let us know. We'll make sure we edit you out. Hi, Cassandra. And let's see what else. Oh, the media that's here, there's no filming, but they are taking notes, and I think they're recording. Am I getting correct? Yes, they are recording. So again, that's to ensure transparency for those that weren't able to make it here tonight, and we'll make sure that they get that information through the public forum too. So with that, I'll turn it over, and we'll go down the line, introduce ourselves, and then I'll turn it over to public affairs, and then back over to our civil engineer.
Thank you, ma'am. Good evening. My name is Richard Trevino. I'm the director of the 502nd Civil Engineer Group. So basically what I'm responsible for is the military housing office, the staff that works there, they work for me. I am the director. Anything facility maintenance, engineering, environmental, housing, and so forth, that's within my jurisdiction. I work for General Enderman.
My name's Walt Graves. I am the branch chief of the Housing Privatization Branch at the Air Force Civil Engineers Center, and our section basically does the portfolio management for all of the housing privatization projects across the Air Force.
Good evening. I'm Colonel Matt Domsala. I'm the Vice Commander for the 12th Flying Training Wing. We're responsible for the flying training that goes on base, but as General Lunderman alluded to, one of the primary mission partners here on base.
Good afternoon. I'm the Command Chief, 502nd Air Base Wing. Work with General Enderman. My name is Chris Lante. I know I've met some of you already. Hi, Cassandra. So I'll pass it on down the line.
Hello, I am Major Greg Arrington, and I am the Flight Commander of the Bioenvironmental Engineering Flight here at Randolph, and my primary duty is to perform health risk assessment for industrial workplaces and also a little bit of environmental sampling, such as the water system.
Good evening, Lieutenant Colonel Charlie Haig. I'm the Deputy Commander for the Security Forces Group for JBSA and also the Deputy Executive Agent for Randolph. Deputy Executive Agent also serves as the Senior Advisor representing the residents of Joint Base Randolph to the Military Housing Office in the 502nd Air Base Wing, which leads back to Hunt Housing.
Hi, good evening. My name is Joe Hockaday. I'm the Director of the 802nd Civil Engineer Squadron. Pretty much everything under my purview includes all of facility engineering across JBSA, as well as environmental support, and my office does also oversee privatized housing.
Good evening, everyone. I am Master Sergeant Tyrone Lawson, 502nd Public Affairs Superintendent, and today I will serve as your moderator. To better facilitate this conversation, I would like to go over a few ground rules. We want you to be honest and candid with your feedback, but please remember to be professional. Please limit your questions and concerns to 2 to 3 minutes to ensure everyone has a chance to ask their questions. Due to current litigation against privatized housing, there may be some questions we cannot comment on to ensure we remain neutral. Public Affairs will annotate all questions and will ensure they provide the appropriate questions to the offices they need to go to. Please wait until the open forum portion of the meeting to ask questions and voice concerns. In order for everyone to hear you, please ensure you use the microphones located in the center of the aisles. Thank you again for attending. We will now start our event.
Okay. Before I turn it over to the moderator and our civil engineering team, I also wanted to just remind everybody that it is non-reprisal environment. So if there's any question about that, we do encourage open dialogue and transparency, and please speak freely, speak your mind, but there should be no fear of reprisal here, and I've got that on the record. I've got a bunch of JAGs here to back me up, so. All right, with that, I'll turn it over to Joe Hockaday, who will run us through a couple slides, and then we'll open it up to the forum here. Thanks.
Thank you, ma'am. So hey, we'll start off with our agenda slide. We've already done our introductions. We'll talk a little bit about why we're here. Again, just re-emphasizing some things General Linderman's already mentioned. We do want to talk about a lot of actions that we've taken since the last town hall, so we have a couple slides on that. Then we will get into the resident open forum and then take your questions. So let's go ahead and go to the next slide. Again, so as General Linderman mentioned, we're here to listen to your concerns. We want to advocate for better quality of housing in an open, transparent, and non-attributional environment. So with that said, basically, we're here to hear what your concerns are tonight, and whatever those are, we like to gain insight into what may be happening out there, maybe some things we don't know about, but we welcome any feedback you want to give to us, and whatever we take home tonight, a lot of it will, hopefully we can take action on and improve the quality of housing for everybody. So, okay, next slide. I got quite a few slides. A lot of these deal with actions that we have taken, some more recently and some just kind of over time. We are in the process of establishing a resident council, and some of those folks are here tonight, and we'll introduce them here in just a minute. We want to talk about some of the things that we're doing to help empower the residents. I will talk a little bit about what's called a dispute resolution process. We'll go through that. And then one of the final things I'll talk about is a project that we're doing called a dehumidification project that we're doing across all of the Randolph homes. So, okay, next slide. So back in August, early August, roughly about 5 months ago, the Air Force Civil Engineer Center, that's what AFCEC stands for, they came out with 11 recommendations. I'm not going to go through all of these, but I do want to highlight some of them. Like the very top one, they help provide some guidance with regards to moisture and relative humidity in the home environment. So the reason that's important is because if your humidity is too high in your home, it makes it difficult for the air conditioning system to work properly. And also you want to have the right humidity and moisture levels because that will help inhibit the growth of mold. So we've been looking at that guidance. Matter of fact, we're implementing this guidance with the mold project, or I'm sorry, the dehumidification project I'll talk about towards the end of the presentation. The second line up there about providing legal assistance. We have been having issues where, as we've been going through and there have been quite a few folks here at Randolph who have asked for legal assistance, and we've provided that. So it's available. We have Colonel Ben Martin. Ben, if you could kind of raise your hand. He's here on the staff with the Security Forces Group, but he's available. And when I get into the dispute resolution process, I'll go into this in a little bit more detail. Again, I have a couple slides on the resident council. We'll get to that in just a minute. I have a couple slides on some new metrics that we're starting to measure. One thing I would mention real quick is based on a lot of the feedback that we get from everybody, we take your feedback, especially like in terms of work order or maintenance concerns, and we try to use that to help steer the budget that Hunt is doing to improve the home. So we are listening to you, and we are taking your concerns, and we are trying to make sure those things are incorporated into future long-range improvements and upgrades for the entire housing community. Okay, so let's go next slide. So there's been quite a few, and I want to say real quick that these are some new metrics. that we received from the Air Force Civil Engineer Center. We just received these metrics in October. We started in November this past month to start implementing them, and so we're starting to put them into practice and see what it's going to tell us. But I do also want to go through some of these as well. So with regards to emergency work orders, the very top line there, what we're required to do is validate 100% of those. Our validation process is going to consist of, we'll be making a phone call on all of them to say, hey, basically we're going to ask what was the quality of the response, what was the timeliness of the response. I know in talking to my folks, I mean, they have, over the month of November, they have made quite a few phone calls. In some instances, they have not been able to actually get in contact with the residents, but they've left messages. And in that situation where if they haven't been able to get a hold of you, they've actually sent the email to whatever email you have on file asking those questions. What was the work order timely? Was it of good quality? So we're seeking your feedback with regards to that. Same thing with urgent work orders, but with regard to urgents, we're just looking at a smaller number of those, about 30%. The same thing on 30%, we will be making phone calls and asking those same types of questions. And routines, we're shooting for 10% of those as I guess a quality check, if you will, calling on 10% of those. One thing I really want to foot stomp tonight, that fourth line down where it talks about change of occupancy maintenance. Basically what happens at change of occupancy maintenance is when somebody moves out of the home and then the home is vacant, and then the hunt will come in and they will do certain repairs. They're supposed to make sure that the home is clean and ready for a new occupant, and AFCEC has provided us our own checklist that's different from Hunt's. Again, Hunt, the privatized owner, we run our checklist and we try to make sure that everything that needs to be done on the home before somebody moves in has been accomplished. And again, our requirement on that is we need to look at 100% of these. So again, we just started that in November. Again, and that's our requirement, to do 100% of what's called change of occupancy. We do an inspection before a new resident moves in. The last thing I'll mention on this slide real quick is something called Satisfax. Again, that's also something that's new. Hopefully if you live on base, you've been receiving these Satisfax surveys. You'll receive a Satisfax survey every time a work order is completed, whether it's emergency, urgent, or routine. So what I want to really stress there is please, if you get that survey, and especially if you're dissatisfied with the work that was performed, give it a low score. Everything that comes in with a 3.5 rating or less, our folks are checking on those, and they'll be calling you and saying, why were you dissatisfied? And also, so this is a system that's actually owned and operated by Hunt, but we have full access to it. So Hunt should also be calling you on these as well. So again, if you're dissatisfied with a work order, please rate it on Satisfax and give it a low rating, and you will get a phone call asking why you were dissatisfied. So, okay, so let's go to the next slide. I do want to introduce some of the members of our Housing Residence Council. If any of y'all are here, if you could please stand up. Okay, it looks like we got 4. So if you got, I don't know if that mic is on or not, but if you guys could maybe just introduce yourself real quick.
Good evening, I'm Mike Hayhurst. I live on Main Circle, corner Main Circle and Northwest, and I'm responsible for Talon area. Will you do a map a little bit later on?
Yes, we do.
Okay,
Let's bring up the map real quick right now. On the next slide. Okay.
Good evening, I'm Captain Timothy Yates, and I'm the mentor there in the southeastern quadrant there.
Good evening, I'm Master Sergeant Akajobi. I'm probably one of the most senior people here. Been here almost 4 years, and I'm responsible for the Texan resident.
Good evening, I am Major Melva Bettis, and I am responsible for the area highlighted in blue, which is T-Bird.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you all very much. What I want to mention about our resident council people that are standing here real quick is all of these folks are volunteers. What we've done is we've had 2 meetings with them so far. Actually, this is kind of the 3rd meeting, if you will. But we just want to let you know that we're getting people that are going to be living in your neighborhoods. And what we've been doing is we've been providing them training. A lot of the stuff we're talking about tonight, we've been training them up on it so that they'll be familiar, but they're just another source. They're another avenue that's out there that can help you address your concerns and walk you through some of the procedures and processes. But we just wanted to have people that are out in the community. And I do want to thank all of you so much for volunteering, and we appreciate your support.
So I just want to jump in and say thank you very much to our resident council volunteers, but I also wanted to offer it up. If there's folks in the audience or neighbors that you know that want to be a part of this organization or part of the council, please let us know. It's not limited to military. I think that was our first just stab at it, and so they happen to all be military, but spouses are more than welcome to be a part of the council. In fact, they are usually some of the strongest advocates for what we're doing now to try to change the current trends. So please, if you're interested, let us know afterwards. And then I also wanted to take a minute too. Thank you guys. You can sit down. But Joe, we skipped introducing the rest of your team. So I want to make sure we circle back and,
Yes, ma'am. We'll
and
do
make
that.
sure you introduce your MHO.
I'll do that in just a minute, ma'am.
Okay.
Thank you. But I do want to highlight what General Linderman just said. What we did kind of notice on the council is, being in the military, a lot of folks are TDY and do training and such. So we do need to add some more people to our council, and we do want to add some more spouses. So if you're interested, please let us know. We do want to beef it up a little bit. So before we go much further, why don't we do this real quick? If everybody from my military housing team could please stand up and maybe introduce yourselves as well.
My name's Diane Butler. I am the Housing Element Chief for Randolph.
Hello, I'm Angela Klein-Upton, not Angela from Hunt. So I just get that question quite a bit. And I'm the housing manager at the housing office.
Hi, I'm James Fisher. I'm the JBSA Housing Element Chief for all of housing.
Okay, why don't we go next slide? Next slide. Yeah, okay, that one. Thank you. So I want to talk real quick about the things that we're doing or the things that are available to residents to help empower you to resolve your concerns and issues. The very first thing I would say is be sure and submit work orders. I mean, get a work order number and follow up on it. Again, the next bullet that I've already talked about is once you get a work order and if they come over and do the work, if you're not satisfied, be sure and fill out the satisfact survey, because that's a very important feedback tool that we can use to help ensure help ensure that we get back out there and make sure whatever the work was done, it may have to be redone. I'll talk about the dispute resolution process here in just a second. With regards to contacting the military housing office, like I say, we just introduced all of them to you. The one thing that I would say is something I said at the Lackland Town Hall the other day is I think we've been in the privatized effort for about 10 years now, somewhere around that time frame. And I really do believe over time, I think people on the base have kind of lost a little bit of connectivity, and they may not even remember that we do have a housing office on base, and their goal and their responsibility is to advocate on your behalf. So again, I just wanted to highlight that and just make sure that everybody knows that that's another resource that's out there. And I think there's some good things I can talk about and highlight that a little bit more when we talk about the dispute resolution process. Did you have something?
So I do. You can read my mind. So I think a lot of you might be following what's happening in the news and also with the FY20 NDAA that hopefully will be signed soon. But one of the other issues that's going to hopefully be passed soon to empower the residents is that tenant bill of rights that I know a lot of us have been waiting on, and it's going to provide a lot more. It's empowering to our residents in terms of withholding BAH and those kinds of things, if that's the final version that is passed. But we'll keep you informed on those measures that as they come to fruition. We're pretty excited about some of the things that are within this new budget that we hope to see in a couple of weeks.
Thanks, ma'am. The last thing on this slide here I just want to really, really emphasize is you can always use your chain of command. Whether it's your first sergeant, your squadron commander, whoever. I can just tell you I've had a couple of examples here lately where Chief Lantain has emailed me comments, concerns, photographs from residents at different places across the base, but it was great feedback for us. It was stuff that we were able to take action on and go out and visit people, and we would ask them, hey, what's the issue here? What can we do for you? We had some issues. I think some people had some areas of mold, and we were able to go out and for whatever reason, I don't know how the system may have broke down, but we were able to go talk to them and say, hey, let's work with you, let's take care of that, and we did. So again, I would just highly encourage everybody that if you have a neighbor, a friend, anything that's going on, just for sure use your chain of command, for sure use our housing office, use anybody, use me if you have to. I mean, and we'll try to get out there and take a look and try to resolve whatever may be going on in your home. Okay, hey, I do want to walk through the dispute resolution process as best I understand it, but if I get it wrong, we got Colonel Martin here to help out. But so here's how it typically works. So the very first step is you would go to Hunt in this case, either one of their customer service representatives or their community manager. They have a new community manager, Miss Julie Williams. Many of you have hopefully are getting emails from her, and she's fairly new. But so that's kind of the first step is you go to Hunt and you may bring a concern to them and talk to them about it. But if at that level with the community service manager or the community director, if you're not able to resolve your issue, the next step you should go to is our housing office. And our housing office will then again advocate on your behalf. They'll speak with Hunt. They'll try to resolve the issue as well. And for me, I think if you can't get something resolved at that level, to me, what we typically do and what we've done in the past is we've actually referred people over to the JA office, and the JA office has helped. If I get this wrong, let me know, Colonel Martin. But I would say they try to help articulate what your concerns are, and I would say put it in the form of a claim. I don't know if that's the exact right word, but they will help you articulate that and put it in a format that I think will be helpful in terms of helping you get to negotiate whatever it is you might want to get to. But to me, I mean, once you kind of go through those kind of steps and procedures, at the very end, if you can't reach resolution, and that's kind of one of the last steps. Oh, and I do want to mention real quick. I know that a lot of the things that have gone into the dispute resolution process, they have gone to Colonel Carter as the executive agent. He has advocated on the residents' behalf, and I know for General Lenderman as well, things have come up to her level, and she's advocated on the residents' behalf. But I think at some point, if you're just not able to reach resolution, at that point you could seek your own legal counsel. And Ben or Colonel Martin, correct me if I'm wrong. At that point, then our legal office, your advisory role would stop if a new counsel is sought. Is that kind of?
I would nitpick a little bit.
Okay. Well, I'll let you nitpick. So go ahead.
Nitpick to the sense that if at whatever point of this process you want to come talk to a lawyer. Come talk to my office. Just come in. Whether or not you just want a vector, is this a sanity check, or is this we have an issue and I want to understand what my rights are before I go hire someone on the civilian side, come into the office and talk. Or if you want to jump straight to hiring somebody on the civilian side, that's not something that is going to be bound by this dispute resolution process that you put into the contract. So we can kind of help chart the path for you at any point in that. So just to be clear, there's no point where you are limited from seeking legal counsel, either coming into our office or going on outside off base.
Okay, thanks, Colonel Martin. Appreciate it. Okay, we got. Hey, Walt Graves, you want to chime in on this, or can we pass the mic to Walt? Thanks, Walt. Appreciate it. By the way, that's Walter Graves. He works at AFCEC Civil Engineer Center, right here in town, Port of San Antonio. So. Okay, let's go. I think this is my final slide, the next one here. All right, I do want to talk about the Hunt Dehumidification project. I don't know if many of you know that Hunt did implement a pilot project for 16 homes. And in those pilot projects, they have been successful in all of them to maintain the relative humidity below 55%. So it's been a success story. And I know here recently we had the Secretary of Air Force here, and we showed her our pilot home, and we talked about this particular project and the money that was going to take to do it for the entire base. And I can tell you she was very supportive of it. And she was along with General Linderman and other folks, she helped champion the project, and we're very excited that this project is going to be starting fairly soon. And I think it's going to take about 20 months total. I think they're doing it in two phases of 10 months each. But anyway, I want to talk a little bit about the features of the project real quick. It's going to be about a $5 million project to do all the homes on base. To me, some of the most important things is they're going to be putting vent fans in the bathrooms, and they're going to be kind of automatically on and off based on humidity levels. I can tell you when I was at Randolph, and before my current job, I was working at Randolph back in the summer. And when I went out to look at there was a period of time where they wanted us to go and look as many homes as possible, or at least residents who wanted to, from a life safety and health perspective. That was one of the big topics, was the bathrooms didn't have vent fans. So that's a big plus on this particular project. The other thing is the airflow isn't that well in the house, the ducting, a lot. Again, I don't ever want to use the fact that the homes are historical as an excuse, but it was difficult to retrofit them with air conditioning systems. So they're doing these jumpers that'll help transfer the air from room to room. And then, to me, the most important part of this project is going to be what's called an inline dehumidification system. I know a lot of people on base have bought dehumidifiers, and the problem with those is when you run those, you have to kind of empty them out every so often. But the nice thing about these inline ones is they'll be plumbed to a separate drain system so that you wouldn't have to do that. So again, we're excited about this project. We're especially grateful that it was funded and supported by the Air Force leadership, and we're looking forward to implementing it. So, ma'am, did you have something? Okay.
Just want to again say that this was a Hunt initiative that they're excited to pursue, and I know several homes have already been done. I think 10 or so. So there's over 300 homes in Randolph, and their goal is to accomplish this in all of the homes here at Randolph. And be happy to get your feedback on how you think it's going. If there's things that we can pass back to Hunt that we can share with them, I'd be happy to do that. But the secretary, as Joe mentioned, was here, and we happened to have an opportunity to show her the homes that had this project completed, and so she has eyes on it as well. But with that, I think we're almost ready to open it up to the president.
Matter of fact, that's the next slide. So I think before we do this, if you wouldn't mind, could you reiterate the ground rules real quick?
Yes, again, I just want to go over a couple more rules one more time. Most importantly, please remember that this is being videotaped. If you do not want your question on social media, please get with our public affairs representatives, and we'll make sure that your portion is edited out. Public affairs, can you please raise your hands, please? See, they're right in the back there. Okay. Also, please keep in mind to try to keep your questions a little bit under to 2 to 3 minutes, but no longer than 5 minutes. We do want to try to give everybody a chance to get to answer their questions. Please remember also that due to litigation against privatized housing, there may be some questions that we cannot ask, so we can remain in a neutral stance. Public affairs is annotating all questions, and we'll make sure it gets to the correct offices. And with that, we'll take your questions.
Good evening. My name is Mark Hyatt. Hi, ma'am. Good to see you again. I just would like to, I need you all's assistance. I'm getting ready to retire. Been wearing the uniform since 1988. And I live in a house that is literally killing me, killing my family. We are sick. We've done mold testing out of pocket 4 to 5 times. Now, you mentioned the DU system being a success. It has not been a success. Let me tell you why it's not been a success at my house. We did mold testing prior to the DU system coming in. We did air quality, and we did something called what's noted as the ERMI test. It's an environmental where you actually do samples and you submit it. After we had the DU system put in at the end of June, beginning of July, we started taking record notes with humidistats that we again had purchased. Hunt provided humidistats as well. We took a log. We ran the DU system by itself. We did not see a significant drop in humidity. We have 6 dehumidifiers in our house that pump at least 70 pints of water out. And we are replacing, or we're changing those out. 2 or 3 of those units are being changed out every single day with the DU system operating. Even with that, 3 weeks later, we did another air quality test. We had found that we had had mold, significant mold that would be identified to not allow us to take our household items. I actually had a mold inspection done of my house, private contractor come in, and they're going to tell me what I can and can't take. In September, I noticed something on my baseboards in my dining room. I pulled the china cabinet back, found it to be mold. Hunt came in, said, "That's not mold." I said, "How do you know?" "Well, we don't know, but we're going to fix it like it is mold." I said, "Well, we need to identify what it is." They would not. My wife did a tape lift, sent it off to a separate lab. So 4 separate labs all told us that we have mold, and we have deadly mold in our house, causing our family members. I have irritable bowel issues. My wife has a dry hack. I've got one son that constantly has migraines. I have another son that has ear infections constantly. I have another son that also has bowel issues. We've got to get out of the house. Ma'am, I need that letter saying that my kids will be authorized to come to Randolph schools without any vouchers, please. All I'm asking is that as a military, we are a family. Please interact, defend us, protect us. This is not the way that I want to leave the Air Force. It shouldn't be the way that I leave the Air Force. Please help us. And I just asked if I could have that letter, and if you could run some interference against Hunt. I know I have my attorney in the room with me. I've got a private attorney that's been assisting us. I'm the last of the 7 families that are in this lawsuit, and I'm desperately trying to leave. But guess what? I can buy a new house, and I've been looking for the last 4 months, but I can't go to that house because I have no furniture. I will not have any furniture. I have to buy furniture, and I have to buy it out. So new house, new furniture, and I still don't know if I can take my family pictures. Hopefully I'll find that out within the next week or so. So please, if you can, please help me. My wife has been advocating anytime, any of the leadership, you are welcome to come to my house. Just let us know. We got 4 boys. We got to clean up after them a couple of times. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. And I appreciate you sharing your story and appreciate our friendship over the last, decade or so. But I do hear what you're saying, so thank you for your feedback on the dehumidification project. That's something that we need to take for action and verify that it does in fact work. In addition, I would like to talk to you offline about the other requests that you had regarding the schools, and if that, I'll turn it over to Richard. I think he wants to say something.
Yes, ma'am, I do. So again, sir, what we'll do is we'll have our staff get with you, because what that'll also drive is for us to work with Hunt in terms with their engineering staff to make sure that what they're proposing in terms of the dehumidification is in fact working. So there's really two parts to that is what are they putting in? Is it really doing what it's supposed to, yes or no? And we can assist them to make sure that are they really doing it correctly? Because we have our own engineering staff. I have my own engineers that we can help with them. And we have done that at times to where if they don't understand what's happening, we have brought in our maintenance folks, we've brought in our engineers, our environmental experts to help them understand what's necessary if they're having challenges. So what I'll do, ma'am, is we'll have our staff get with Mark and we'll set something up and also work with Hunt to see why your house isn't quite doing what it's supposed to.
I have a recommendation. I gave it to Hunt on Monday when we had our community meeting. I'd like to offer that recommendation. It's our story on the DU system. What we recommend for the DU system refit is not a refit. Gut the HVAC system, brand new HVAC system, remove all the ductwork. It's going to be a little pricey, and that's going to help. When they did not do that, even though they cleaned the vents, they blew negative air into our home, and it made the mold worse. I told you we did mold testing right after. Some of the mold was worse than it was before the DU system was put in. So I've got a recommendation. Sorry for the folded paper, but I'm going to give that.
Thanks, Mark.
Hello, good evening. My name is Allison Alexander. I've spoken to you guys before. I just had a question. Is it on? I'm just so tall. I'm sorry. Maybe I'll hold it. Now it's really loud. Okay, so I just had some quick questions I jotted down while we were waiting. You mentioned about the, I'm sorry, let me get it. Whoa. Where did it go? The change of occupancy. Will that be affected with hospitality homes? Because I know my home was turned to a hospitality home. After I moved out, we lost all of our belongings that we couldn't keep, what you couldn't wash. So I mean, we were living in an apartment 20 minutes away that we are now commuting to and from school, to and from work. It's a huge. It was not what we wanted. We were hoping that Hunt could fix our issue and help my daughter not be sick anymore. Unfortunately, that was not an option for us. My question is, why was my home turned into a hospitality home? And who is checking to make sure that these homes are taken care of? Because the family that was moved into our hospitality home, the girl that lived in my daughter's room for a few weeks got so sick she got put on inhalers because she was breathing the same air my daughter was reacting to. So that was my biggest fear moving off base, was that the family that came in behind us would deal with the same nightmare that we had living there. So if that could be checked, because I'm curious as to why these homes are being turned into hospitality homes when that's not hospitality to me. If I was a family getting put there to escape a sick home, only to be put into another sick home, that is not hospitality. And then also, sorry, I'm a little nervous. Also, our shower vents after the pilot program were venting into our attic, not into any kind of a water leaving the building. So how is that helping the humidity in the home if you're literally just pumping the air right back up into the attic? If you think about how many times a family of 4 showers in a week, that's a lot of moisture being put back into the home. So if that could be looked at. Also for us, our dehu did not work either. It was set at 45 and it chilled at 70. Like it never got close. So it was not working. The houses were not insulated. So if you're just pulling moist air from outside constantly into the home, no dehumidifier is gonna work. So if you could look at maybe double paned windows, if you could look at maybe redoing the walls around the windows and around the doors to make sure that they're actually sealed against pests and moisture, that would be super helpful. And then also, what is being done to make sure that families aren't moving into sick homes? And is there going to be a list of these homes that families have had issues with so that future tenants are not moving in unaware to these homes and suffering like the families before them have?
Thanks, Allison. So it's good to see you. There's a couple things I think we can answer, a couple that we need to look into. So regarding, and I'll ask Richard to jump in on some of the more technical pieces like the shower vents. We need to check that. So we'll verify that. The fact that dehumidifier didn't work or isn't working, according.
We don't live there anymore, so I don't know, but.
Well, that's great feedback though, so we'll check on that too. And I think that's going to be a common theme that we'll keep repeating, but we'll check the dehumidifier to make sure it's actually working the way it's supposed to. But in terms of your question about why it was turned into a hospitality suite, and the overarching idea from Hunt was that they do the project on these homes. They are healthy, they are safe, they are clean, and that's where they move the families in while they're working on their home. So it's a temporary place for you to stay while they do install the dehumidifier, and it's kind of a precautionary. But you've raised some good points, and I will be honest with you. I don't know if we're doing change of occupancy for the hospitality suites, but we should, and we will. But most importantly is just to make sure that that system's working in that house.
And then I'm sorry, I have one more question I forgot. The whole government oversight, do you know when that's going to start taking place? Because I know that they have 3 people trying to do all of this, but we were told that there would be more people helping on this side of it. So I know the budgeting maybe has to do with that. Do you know when that's going to start taking place?
Thank you. That's another great thing, and I think Mr. Walters or Mr. Graves wants to talk about that, because that is a good thing that we didn't mention earlier, is that our housing offices will be plussed up, and we'll also have the ability to take care of it internally and have direct hiring authority to expedite the hiring process. But I'm going to turn it over to our AFCAC team rep.
So there's been a couple things. So your question as to alerting residents of previous actions, that's actually in the NDAA. So we in the NDAA's language that a 7-year history will be provided. Okay. So you're going to see that. On the additional personnel, that is something we've been fervently working. If you're familiar with our POM process, it looks several years into the future. We managed to get it inserted to get the money into the budget in the 20 budget. So within this fiscal year we're currently in, we do have the money within that bill when they sign it for the additional personnel. On the staffing side, we have pushed what normally takes almost a year to build the positions into the budget down to months. So we're actually going to have them all on the UMD by the end of this month and middle of January. We'll have every one of those billets on the UMD across the entire United States. Okay. Additionally, what I've told the bases and what we're pushing out, especially for the ones we're having the most problems, is if you need manpower resources or you need to bring in a contract augmentation, let me know. We will support it. We will push the money down to get you the resources to provide that oversight out there. Because it is recognized that the oversight has been insufficient. We do need to look at 100% of the comms. That's really the opportunity where we get to look bumper to bumper through the entire home. And so getting through 100% of them, it tells us that once every at least 3 years, we have looked from one end of that home to the other end of that home, and it needs to be a more intense inspection. So we're changing the whole inspection.
Will that include the ductwork? Will you be removing the vents and checking the ductwork?
We'll be looking to see if we can. We won't have the bore scopes and the stuff to go really in depth, but yes, we're going to try to make this more like the home inspection when you buy a house. Okay. So to check the fire alarm detection system, it's not going to just be push the button and see if it goes off. Spray the aerosol on it, make sure the ionization chamber is working, make sure the whole system's, check the electrical. So the inspection is going to be much more intense and more rigorous than it has been in the past. A lot of big changes we're putting, but as you point out, it is contingent on getting that manpower out there, because there just is not the manpower resources for them to actually conduct those kinds of inspections. So we are adding 219 positions across the Air Force to provide for this workload out there.
I'm sorry, I just have one more question I just thought of. Also, when we had to move off base, we thankfully my parents were able to give us a loan because we had to replace everything that we couldn't fit in a washing machine. My husband, we couldn't afford movers on top of that, so my husband in 105-degree weather in August tried to move what was left. And I mean, it wasn't a lot, but it was still many loads, What kind of movement, is there any kind of support the military will provide for these families to get them moved to somewhere safe? Because I feel like that's not fair that we had to lose everything and then go into debt. And this Christmas is breaking my heart because I can't afford anything for our kids. So I'm just saying, if you guys could possibly support the people that have physical documentation, like doctor's notes, they're saying that their house is making their children like life-threatening ailments, that you guys could help them get somewhere safe. That would like, I don't know how to like say it better than that.
Thanks, Allison. And Richard, can you describe that program that I have available?
Yes, ma'am. So what we have is, so when we have a life safety health issue, the installation commander does have the authority to direct an off-base move. So when you're, so you're correct, Allison. So when you have that documentation from your primary care physician that relates those medical conditions to the actual house itself, then provide that, work with Diane and the staff, and we can in fact look at that, and then we have a direct correlation to where then we have the approval authority to do a commander-directed move that allows us to pay for that off-base relocation. But it has to be that life safety health condition. Yes, ma'am.
And I think, sorry, Allison, I think we also have to give Hunt a chance to try to fix it too.
That is correct,
and
yes, ma'am.
That's the challenge, because that could take time. And then that's when you move into a temporary, and then it disrupts your family and that kind of thing. But that's the process to protect the government too.
Well, just an example, the one thing I forgot to clean was our Christmas tree. When we opened up our Christmas tree, within 30 seconds, I was sneezing, coughing, and ended up getting super sick. It's a brand new tree we just got the year before we moved to Randolph. It's like a $300 tree, so I didn't even think about it. That had been sitting out there for a month last year, and it absorbed whatever was in our house that made us sick, and like we had to throw away our tree. So I mean, it's just those little things you don't even think about that are impacting these families, and it's been kind of a nightmare living on this space, and I just hope it doesn't happen to families in the future.
What I would recommend is that we get back with Diane and her team so we can, navigate what can we do, right? So what actions, especially like in your particular case, Hunt, if they've already done actions or have not done their responsibility, then we could say, okay, where are we in that process? Can we say, yes, we've given them the opportunity, they really haven't performed, therefore we're at this stage. So I'd say get with my staff, that way we can specifically look at your case, because every person's different, right? And we can see what we can do to make certain that maybe we are not at the beginning, but maybe we're somewhere a little bit further on.
All right, thank you so much, you guys, appreciate it.
Thank you, Allison.
So one of the things, ma'am, if I may, to go back to the manpower issue, because that's a very valid point, this is why when Joe talked about the actual inspections and the metrics that we're talking about, so what Mr. Graves had indicated was the manpower piece that the Air Force went out and received, it was based upon those metrics that we say as an Air Force, we're going to go and provide that oversight to Hunt or to any other privatized owner. So your role in putting those work orders into the system is going to be paramount, absolutely critical, especially when we go out there and do our oversight. If it's an emergency work order and they do not respond or do not rectify, then that gives us the ability to go out and hold them accountable, but also when it comes to their performance. And now we have additional, if you want to say ammunition, but additional justification to say where they're not performing. We work with AFCEC and the Air Force Civil Engineers Center to say, go to the corporate level and now do things differently. The manpower piece also factors in a resident advocate. So we have the resident council, but there's going to be a position for JBSA, hopefully two, one for each location, that will not work for me. They will work for Colonel Carter and Colonel Haig at Randolph, that they in turn will be separate. So there's another mechanism that if we need to have somebody engaged in the process that's independent of my staff. So there's going to be another resident advocate, another person that's going to be another chain of command potential that's outside of me. So if my staff, if I'm not doing my job, you now have another mechanism to go to make sure that your voice is being heard. Okay? I'm sorry, ma'am, apologize.
Hi, I'm Mary Beth Pisano. Currently, all of my belongings are still in that house. And I appreciate everyone and all that you guys have tried to do on our behalf. But I feel like there's a failure, and we are like the poster child for that failure. We went through all the steps of resolution. My husband's a JAG, so he's very particular about going up the chain of command and following procedure. And we did feel that the military side was trying to be an advocate for us, very sympathetic, but I do recognize, being in the middle of this, that your hands are tied. And it felt very evident with everything that was attempted to be done on our behalf, that really nothing was able to be done. And I don't know what needs to be done to fix this process. I know the contract made between privatization of these homes and the military limits what you guys are able to do, and you have to remain neutral. But there has to be something else other than resident advisories and steps of resolution. I mean, we literally had a house of sewage under us as the third family in 3 years. I don't want to go into all of it, but this is a failure after failure after failure. And the two previous families before us went up through their squadron commanders, change of command. It's not fixable in the current state that it is, these steps of resolution. I don't really have a question other than to say this isn't working. Everything that is being attempted to be done to help advocate on behalf of military families is a failure. And I appreciate the emphasis on mold and air quality and all of that, but our house was a plumbing nightmare, failure to be fixed and addressed properly for, I know, at least 3 years going back. They're letting these homes fall apart and sticking family after family in. And yes, they're making families sick, and they're making families go in debt because they have to move unexpectedly. And meanwhile, there's a trail of destruction, and lives are uprooted. And what I'm hearing today, and I appreciate the Tenant Bill of Rights that's being put together, and I appreciate this resolution dispute process, but it's a waste of time. I mean, maybe in certain cases they're able to get certain smaller issues resolved, but I mean, as far as I know, if there's ever an extreme case, I feel like our family certainly is in that category. This house, 3 Southeast Road, is in that category. And we had no choice at the end, because nothing was able to be resolved, than to go to outside counsel. And I pray that that will resolve something, but in the meantime, we're left as victims of this whole process. And still, we've spent thousands of dollars since October 11th trying to put our life back together, and something is not working. And I think about it, I stay up at night thinking, how can the military side really affect change other than wagging their finger at Hunt and saying, you failed this family, you need to step up and do the right thing. But what does that really, what power does that really have? So I would say, if anything, I appreciate the effort, but this process is a failure, and there needs to be focus more on that and what can really be done to help families. And that would be my question, is to please work on the process, see what power you do have, because it's not working. And I would ask that that be the focus, and as much as it is about mold, it needs to be about just these houses falling apart. Their mold is an issue, mold is devastating, but there's other health issues, there's other safety issues, there's other issues that are going on with these homes that are not being addressed by Hunt. And residents are being lied to. The last thing I will say is, you talked about you can get the history going back so many years. when we sat at our lease signing with the Hunt people in their office, I had been warned that our house had issues. I asked them directly, did our house have issues? I was warned not to take this house. The person from Hunt looked it up, looked me straight in the eye, and said, oh, no, there was a minor water issue. It's been taken care of with a sump pump. This house is good to go. 10 months later, I no longer live on base. So I would ask you to focus the process on how to really enact change when these families are failed by the Hunt, and make that, something needs to rattle, because this isn't working. I appreciate your effort and I appreciate everyone's concern, but in the end, you know, sympathy and advocacy needs to really affect change and be able to be effective for families, because it is a very isolating, scary place to be when you live on an Air Force base and you feel like you have no voice, and even the people you go to who are trying to help you really don't have much of a voice either. And there's a company running these houses that has, in my mind, really no valid oversight. So I would hope that somehow this resolution dispute process and what can be done can really be looked at in a way that'll make positive change going forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Pisano. And I can't even begin to understand what your family has been through. I saw the coverage. I walked through your house, and yes, all I can say is you're absolutely right. This process failed you, and we collectively, the command and our higher headquarters, we are doing what we can right now to understand where the gaps are, where the problems are in terms of the oversight. I'm hopeful that the next family will get that 7-year report and see what happened to your home, or see what happened to all of your homes, and they'll be informed when they go in. But likewise, the oversight, the increase in manning, the work order process, the satisfacts, those are things that weren't in place a year ago. And my heart breaks that you went through what you have gone through, but I'm hopeful that each step we're going to get a little stronger in terms of accountability and what we can do to save the next family. But I'm just, on behalf of the team up here, I'm extremely sorry for what you went through.
Good evening. Thank you, ma'am, so much for your time. Thank you, sir, so much. Thank you, everybody, so much. I really just wanted to say this because there is a lot of progress being made when it comes to where we are now and where Hunt was. When I first moved into housing in May of 2016, it was like fighting tooth and nail to get anything accomplished as far as anything big. And the small work orders, the leaks, the toilets, that small stuff that can be fixed, Hunt has no problem doing that, right? That's easy. But when it comes to major stuff that costs money, that costs Hunt time, it's like pulling teeth to get them to do something, right? And I say that because, again, I said before, I'm probably one of the most senior residents that's been here. I've been here almost 4 years, so I've experienced the highs and the lows. I've experienced Hunt actually cooperating and doing something that we needed, and I've experienced the exact opposite where Hunt actually sent threatening emails to my inbox stating that they were going to fine me. And I say that because I just want to give two examples of what I went through and why it's passionate for me to be a resident council member, to try to advocate for the residents, because I've been there. The first example was when we had a trampoline, right? So you think trampoline, you think kids have a good time, you know, not a big deal. So we had our trampoline. The way our house is set up is our backyard is actually our front yard. Our front yard is actually our backyard. If you see base housing, we have more space in the front yard. And so therefore we had soccer, trampoline in the front yard. Neighborhood kids would come, jump on the trampoline. We can actually sit on the couch, look out the window, see the kids playing. Neighbors playing, no problem. And so in our eyes, this, you know, a family that is having that much of fun and trying to make base housing what it is, it shouldn't be a problem. But to Hunt, it was a problem. Not only was it a problem to Hunt, it was a problem a year later. So we had this trampoline set up for a whole entire year before they said anything. And the reason that they gave us, it was because the leadership was driving past our house and they didn't want to see the trampoline anymore. So that was the reason that they gave us. And I said, what leadership? Who? What base, whomever, would drive across a house, a community, and not want to see kids playing? So I refused to move the trampoline, right? Get another email, second notice, move the trampoline. Why? The kids are having fun. My daughter's special needs, just threw that out there. You know, they like routine, they like to do the same thing. Still, I had to move the trampoline, okay? All right, I refused to move the trampoline. And so we got some other people involved. A couple, Miss Butler was very helpful with that. She can actually vouch for me on that. And then I got a notice saying if you don't move the trampoline by this date, you will be fined so many days. Every day you will incur a fine, right? And at that point, I really felt hopeless, you know. I didn't have anywhere to turn. I just had to do it. So we moved the trampoline, and to this day, no kids hop on the trampoline anymore. You barely see any neighborhood kids. It's just not as fun anymore. So that's just one example, and I won't take long. I know you have somewhere to be, Mel. My second example is when our home kept overflowing with sewage, right? And the first time we figured it was, you know, maybe something minor, maybe toilet got clogged up, whatnot. Done deal, they came, dehumidified the place. We had to clean it up, by the way. It was an emergency work order. They came a little bit after the fact. Another time, it happened again, okay? And we were like, okay, this is not right. There's no reason why our neighbor's house is flooded and our house is flooded at the same time with dirty sewage water. Someone needs to come in and really take a look at this. So they send somebody in, take a look. He goes underneath, takes some photos, and he finds one wet wipe deep in the sewage. So he takes a picture of the wet wipe. And I get a picture, me and my wife, we get a picture of a wet wipe somewhere deep down in the sewage, explaining this is the reason why your entire floor or your entire home is flooded. And this is the reason why your neighbor's home is flooded at the same time. And when I got that email, on the end of the email stated that if this happens again, you will pay for it. So not only did they blame the entire sewage system on a wet wipe, they actually stated that if it happens again, I will be responsible for the repairs. This is happening to our military community. And I know I'm not the first one, I'm probably not the last. And so I told my whole family, I said, okay, if nobody flush any wet wipe down the toilet, like nobody do that. And sure enough, maybe a month or two later, the whole entire house flooded again. So at that point, I was just fed up. I got some more people involved, and they actually came in, and the guys that came in were very helpful. The maintenance workers, for the record, it's not their fault. The maintenance workers, 9 times out of 10, are very helpful. They always do what they can within their scope. So the guy came in and he's like, man, this is a bigger problem. This problem actually stems from the city sewage that pulled into the military sewage. And so here we are, Hunt was trying to blame this on us when this is a citywide problem. And had I not fought for that or pushed back, or had I not even had the guts to stand up for myself, this would have been on me. This would have been out of my pocket. And I say that because I'm a senior NCO in the military. I have the training and I have the rank to defend myself. But what's going to happen when a young airman or someone like that doesn't have the training or doesn't have the rank to defend themselves? And this is what we have to look at big picture, ma'am. Hunt is only going to do what Hunt wants to do, because they've already signed a contract. They've already signed a 50-something year contract. They don't have to really listen to us if they don't want to. They will, because they're on our military installation. But bottom line is they don't have to do it. And we need to be aware of that. And the last thing I want to say is, I'm not sure what's going on with the historic housing stuff. This is just me talking as a private citizen. Nobody cares about this historic housing stuff, man. I've been asking around the residents, do you care if these houses are historic and that nobody wants to tear them down? If you ask any resident, ma'am, they will tell you they don't care about the historic tag on it. They'd rather have a new home than walk around calling this place historic. If we want to keep this place historic, let's keep 2 or 3 model homes up as historic, so people can actually see what the houses look like back in 1940, whatever. And let's get some legislative action going. Let's remove this historic tag mess, because nobody really cares. And let's knock all of these houses down and get some fresh homes up. That's the final solution. Thank you, ma'am.
Ma'am, I'd like to talk about that a little bit, if that's okay. Hey, Sergeant Akajobi, thanks very much. First of all, I want to say thanks very much for your volunteerism and working on our resident council. But you did mention one thing that I do want to talk about, and that was the repetitive work orders. That was actually on my slide as well. One thing that we're going to be looking for is if there's a repetitive type of work order, like you were talking about, the sewage overflows once and twice, then we know that there's a bigger problem out there. So I'm glad you brought that up, because that's another metric that we're going to be looking for. But I would encourage you as well, as we talked about earlier. So if you're having that type of recurring problem and you're not getting the response that you need from Hunt, for sure go to our housing office, because our housing office can also advocate on your behalf and say, wait a minute, obviously there's a bigger problem here. Let's do a better job to take care of that. So, and I don't know if Richard wants to talk about the historical piece, but I'll talk about that a little bit as well. The houses are considered historical, but that doesn't mean, there's some things, and it mostly deals with the exterior, but there is some things we can do. We can seal windows, we can do all that stuff. We just have to coordinate it with the State Historical Office. But you're right, one thing I really want to emphasize is just because these homes are historical, that doesn't mean we're not going to repair them to the standards that they need to be repaired. But that's a great point. Sometimes I hear that the historical piece is used almost as an excuse for not doing things that they should do. It's not an excuse. You know, I visited a lot of these homes this past summer when we were doing our life safety and health checks. Another thing that people were telling me about was when it would rain real hard, the water would come in through the window seals. I mean, that's not a historical issue. The windows need to be sealed or new windows need to be put in. And for us to address some of those issues, we just have to coordinate with the State Historical Preservation Office so we can fix those things. So being historical is not an excuse for not fixing the homes that we need to be fixed. And thanks for bringing that up. And once again, thanks for serving on our Housing Resident Council.
And then let me also add the issue when it comes to like tearing them down. So that's a little bit of a challenge because we have actual federal law. So you're correct. It will require an act of Congress literally in order to change that. We have the National Historic Preservation Act that says when you have historical facilities that meet a certain criteria, they are historical by nature, right? So for Randolph, it's very similar to Fort Sam. We have houses, Fort Sam has houses that are over 100 years old. The houses here on Randolph are 80 plus years old. And I mean, there is somewhat of a benefit from a historical perspective because we learn from our past, right? We project that for the future. But Joe's correct. It doesn't mean that we can't fix them. We just have to do it within accordance with the federal rules. So there are some instances across the Air Force where they have looked at, does it make sense because the houses are such in horrible condition, do we demolish them as part of the project and construct new, working through the federal law. That's not done widely across the Air Force or really across the Department of Defense. It's done very isolated because we do have other agencies that will tell us you cannot just demo because they have a federal law that's telling them you have to at least preserve and at least try to repair to preserve that heritage. But it's not an excuse why Hunt just can't fix them. So we have talked about that, to be quite honest, to see can we just tear some of these down. But the reality of it is it's just, right now that's just not an option because Hunt's, their particular agreement is counting on the houses that they currently have. To build new, there's no money for it. It's just not in the portfolio. That should have been decided before we even entered into the agreement. And specifically for Randolph, that was a conversation. It was also a conversation as, do we really need 317 houses? Is that really the right number? So we actually took some of the houses out of the inventory and we actually made them TLFs because the number was too high. We used to have actually over 800 plus houses on Randolph back in the day when we actually had Wary and a lot of others. We had the old townhouses. So we demolished all of those houses because they were, in my opinion, bad houses, and we kept the Circle and Duplex because of where they were located, and they were, quite honestly, better quality at that time. So it's not that it can't be done, it just takes a lot of effort to get there, and it will take literally an act of Congress to change the law that says we can just demo without having to go through that Department of Interior process. So, but doesn't mean we can't maintain them.
One other add. We are demoing 60 units at Wright Pat, but just to give you an idea of the intense negotiations involved with the SHPO, the Air Force is having to fork over $7.1 million as a mitigation to the demo to just do that under that act. So it's not easy. It's a very difficult act to work with. But in that case, we're not demoing to build new. They're excess units. We don't have a need for them. And that's why we're demoing them. And we can't afford to keep maintaining a unit we don't need.
So one last quick comment. Master Arnay, I want to thank you for stepping up to be part of the resident council. And you touched on something that I think bears repeating. As a resident on Randolph, Hunt and I didn't always see eye to eye. But like you mentioned, you know, as a command chief, I have the ability to be a little bit more assertive. You, as a senior NCO, have the ability to be a little more assertive. But we have young airmen out there, senior airmen, staff sergeants, who really, it's not necessarily about their ability to be assertive. It's maybe their ability to feel that they have the voice to engage with, and as a result, they'll just be quiet. So that's kind of, I think a great opportunity, and you mentioned it, but a great opportunity for us. And I would ask, and I hate to say charge, but I would ask you guys to please be those advocates for those young airmen out there that maybe don't have the voice or don't feel that they have the voice. That is really what we need from this resident council. And if you don't feel like you're getting any kind of movement from Hunt, then we need you guys to elevate extremely quickly through our MHO and on up to us. We do have some ability to pressure and through AFCEC withhold performance bonuses and things like that. So, but really, bottom line, thank you very much for stepping up and being an advocate for those young airmen, all of you, council members.
Hi, my name is Mary Lehman. We have lived here at Randolph since 2016, and I want to start out by saying that I agree with Sergeant Okojobi. When we first got here, Hunt was much less responsive. They've become more responsive over time, so I think that's in our favor. But overall, they're completely untrustworthy. They're going to work in their own best interest, and in many cases, they don't even act in their own best interest because they don't do basic maintenance that would keep them from spending thousands or tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of dollars to take care of catastrophes that could have been prevented. We've been in the military a long time. We've lived in Wary housing, we lived in Capehart housing, we lived in military-run housing and privatized housing. And I'm sorry to say, we lived in brand new housing that Hunt built at a different installation. And within the 7 years after it was built, while we lived there, they took no steps to do basic maintenance, and the houses were already beginning to fall apart. So I don't have any confidence in newly built housing if it's going to be built by Hunt. I think that we can take the housing that we have, and I, for one, actually really appreciate that it's historical, my personal opinion, but I think we can make it workable and safe, but it's going to take a lot more money than Hunt is willing to put into it. I like the plans that you have in place. I think that over time, they're going to see some results, but I really feel that Hunt doesn't have any oversight. They're ready to find residents, but there's no one finding them. And that's what they care about, is how much money they're making. That's the only thing they care about. I also wanted to speak to the plan that you have. It looks like a really good plan, but while we're taking care of all of the underneath the house and the attic and places where they might be unsealed, and we're taking care of the seals around the windows and doors, the walls are full of cracks, and those are equally a problem as far as humidity getting into the houses. When people move in, they're repainted, and they're just painted right over, but the cracks are not filled, and insects and rodents and humidity can find its way in very easily. So that's just something to consider with the plan that you've got in place.
Thank you, Mary. So great point about preventative maintenance. That's something that we are near and dear to our heart, especially having gone through the experience that we did last summer with the dorms, and that was where we fell short as a military when it came to the dorms with preventative maintenance, that we have been redirecting our teams to focus on and putting money toward. So I can't speak to Hunt and what their plans are for in terms of preventive maintenance. I don't know, Richard, if we have insight, or if Mr. Graves, you do.
Preventive maintenance across the portfolio is an area that we've recognized that many of the housing providers are not up to speed. We're talking doing 20% as opposed to 70% of what's on the docket. So one of the things we're doing is we're moving that. It typically, we have not talked about preventive maintenance during our management review committees. Of course, we've talked about the reactive stuff, the emergencies. So we've elevated that and said this is going to be a topic that we're going to discuss quarterly, and it's going to be a topic on every budget review. We approve the budget. We, the Air Force, approve their operations budget for every single one of these project owners. So there's several things that we're using, looking to use the budget as a forcing function, so to speak, to get good behavior out of or better behavior out of our providers out there. And that's one. So when we look at a compliance item, and we have a team out here going out and inspecting, and we see that 2 quarters in a row they've not hit the mark, that's going to be an automatic discussion come the budget. What are you doing to apply resources into that area? Because almost all of these, as many of you mentioned, is a resourcing issue. One thing I do want to clear up is the way the money flows in this thing. Hunt itself doesn't touch the money. It sits with a third-party lock boxes, and that's how it flows. And any movement of the money from the reinvestment to anything is approved by the Air Force. So like this $4.9 million effort, we approved it, but let me tell you, there's only $2.9 million in that box. So there's not like a lot of money there. So there is funding challenges within this project to go try to support all of the efforts out there, because the way the projects are formed, this AETC2 is a limited liability corporation. We talk about Hunt, but Hunt itself is just a management head that sits there. The corporation itself that takes in the BA, it has to pay for all the bills within there. There is no mechanism to force Hunt Corporate itself to pay a single bill. This thing was supposed to be an independent funded thing that lives off the BA. So that does present a challenge with what we're doing. But we looking through the timelines, we will have accumulated the amount of money it needs to do that project and get that done. So we've approved it and moved forward on that basis. But these are things where when we don't have enough resources within the project, then we start looking at, do we need to restructure this? How can we get more resources in there? Because we have to provide safe housing for our military residents. So I thank you for the question, especially on the preventive maintenance, because I agree completely. The preventive maintenance is not being done, and that prevents a lot of emergencies if you do that. And they haven't been doing a good job.
Yeah, just to add real quick to that, so what we look at from the JBSA perspective is, so for facility maintenance, again, that's my job, right? That's what I do for JBSA for facilities. So if we don't do preventive maintenance, you end up having catastrophic facility failure. That's just a given, right? So what the balance that we have to do in terms of the portfolio is, yes, we have to do preventive maintenance, but we just can't start today because there's already a point where recapitalization has to be done. So that's what we have to work with Hunt, and when they submit their budget, we have to be able to go and say, that's not your strategy's not going to be a reality. So if you're going to say now all of a sudden I'm going to do 100% preventive maintenance without taking care of the recapitalization of some of your major infrastructure systems, that's a recipe for failure. It's just not going to happen. That's what we do every day, right? We make sure that doesn't happen. So for us, for preventive maintenance, it's 95+%. That's the Air Force requirement. That's what I do, so that we don't have those recapitalization, those major efforts. So if we're doing 20%, even in your own house, you're going to have major systemic issues. So that's what we have to work with AFCIC and with Hunt to make sure that what they're doing actually does make sense. And that's one of the hammers that we have more so now because of a lot of this oversight that we're talking about.
Mary Beth Pisano again. If you're controlling some of the budget that Hunt is operating under, there needs to be some sort of accountability to the contractors that they're hiring to maintain these homes. There was a carpet and restoration company that was hired, actually brought over. I was told by the man himself, he was working on base on the pilot project. And he was the one that through gobs of lime dust down to cover up the sewage problem in my house. There's no expertise here. Like, they're hiring, they've got this circular set of contractors that Hunt is recycling through project after project, regardless of expertise. So they're, in my mind, operating on the lowest possible fees out that they can get. If they're pulling a man 2 blocks over to come over with his pickup truck and hefty bags full of lime dust to throw down on a sewage problem, how is that addressing the problem? So if you've got budget, if you've got money to hold over them as far as budget goes, there needs to be some sort of verification that they're hiring adequate contractors with adequate special expertise in the certain areas that they're being hired for. It is not acceptable to have a rug and carpet restoration man fixing a major sewage issue under a house. So I say, if you've got the purse strings, then also with the purse strings, they have to be able to show that yes, they are hiring licensed professionals in the area that they're needed to be hired. I don't know if they need to send out, just like the government does when they're hiring contractors, bids and get the whatever. I don't know how they're going to operate, but it's unacceptable to have unqualified contractors. And if you live on Hunt, one of these bases, as most of us do, I mean, even in the short 10 months I was there, there's a very small handful of contractors, general contractors, that are handling far too specialized areas of repair that they may or may not be really qualified to deal with. So that would be my other suggestion, is some kind of accountability that they are hiring the proper contractors to handle these repairs. Thank you.
Ma'am, so that's a very good point, because, so that is part of our oversight. So just in the last few months, when a lot of these issues came to light, we did, in fact, matter of fact, General Lindemann and I and her leadership chain met with Hunt Corporate. And when we looked at some of the key issues that Hunt was deficient in, was really having contractors, or really subcontractors, that really don't necessarily know what they're doing, that they're not hiring the right skill set. So again, a general maintenance person can fix a lot of the small stuff. But when you start specializing into some of the bigger issues, we have expressed to them to bring in the right quality individuals, and they have assured us, well, again, time will tell, that they will, so they did in fact fire some of their subcontractors, partly because we have insisted that they're not performing, but it's also getting to the point that bringing people that can do the job, and part of our oversight mechanisms now, we'll be looking at, again, that's the trends that we'll be looking at, the repetitive problems, the repetitive work orders, the emergencies. Are they doing their job? What's the root cause?
I understand. The thing I'm still grappling with is, what oversight do you really have? I mean, as far as pointing out, this contractor is not sufficient to handle this problem. But then what? I mean, they've already, I just feel like there's a powerlessness on your side to really enact change on Hunt's side. It's one thing to point out the inadequacies or the deficiencies or even the criminal activity, as some people might want to say, on Hunt's procedures and the way they operate. But I feel like this oversight is ineffective because it doesn't have the power behind it, and maybe with the budget that you're talking about, but something needs to be tweaked, because it's not enough right now to say, we're pointing out these deficiencies, but yet there's no real power to enact change on Hunt's end. And I mean, money talks, so if it's the budget, but I mean, there needs to be standards in place that need to be met on Hunt's end. I mean, withhold rent payments all across the entire base until they've come up to these standards. I don't know. Like I said, a team of people need to figure this out. But right now, I feel like the military oversight, the government oversight part of this has no power. And I appreciate the effort to try to enact oversight and to try to stay on top of it, but you guys are powerless at this point to really force this company to do the right thing. And I hope that part can get resolved tomorrow. Thank you.
On a couple points. First, in addition to the checks we're doing on the contractor, the other thing we've seen across several of the projects in the portfolio is a lack of quality control on the part of Hunt or whichever owner themselves. You know, we're not here, we shouldn't be finding the stuff. I mean, their own quality control should find it before we should go over there and find nothing. So the fact that we're finding lots of things is an indication that you're not providing the quality control resources out there to identify these things in the first place. I should go to COM and find nothing. If I'm finding all sorts of defects in a COM, where's your quality control? I'm not here to be your quality control. So where is it at? And yes, the budget is when it comes to levers to affect good behavior, or the right kind of behavior, the behavior we're after. Of course, the performance incentive fees, you've probably heard, we're refining those and working to give the commanders more influence and get rid of some of these measurements in there that don't affect the quality of life for a resident. You know, it's in their interest to submit their budget in time. Let's not give them PIP for that. You know, that's in their interest in the first place. So let's take those things out and let's start increasing the power of whether they get work requests done on time. And then let's put the oversight out there so that we can measure to determine if what they're putting in the system is really right. And then let's give the commander some more influence, subjective, completely subjective influence, to where they can sit there and say, you know, you're just not doing good. So I'm holding back 25% of your performance incentive fee just because, and these are the things you need to do to fix this if you want to earn more performance incentive fee. And so these are things that we are currently really negotiating with each project right now. And they are conceding to providing that more impact for the commander. They've conceded that we're going to give 25% subjectively to the commander. They conceded to changing some of these, and I can't go into depth into all of them because it's kind of proprietary protected communications right now. But I can say we're working that. We're trying to make those PIF payments things that matter, and not automatic things you just get the money, because and things that really improve the life of the resident. Going past that, though, we do look beyond the PIF. What other levers exist within the documents that we have now that we can use? And we've looked at the budget and say, we have budget approval authority. How can we change our processes and use this more as a lever to affect behavior? And that's where I said, we're looking at things, well, why don't we tie this compliance checklist into the budget to where we're looking at this and then we're using this to make the pressure points on how is the project owner addressing the budget in these areas where we can definitely see you're not up to your obligations. And we have been effective at that at a few sites where we were at loggerheads with the project owner, and I just said, fine, I'm not approving the budget. Until I see this in the budget, I'm not approving it. And they said they changed the budget and covered it in there. So we're looking at that may be another tool to use. And we're not beyond that. We're looking at what other mechanisms beyond just charm and persuasion and strongly worded letters that we could do to do it beyond going straight to that formal dispute process. Because once you go into that formal dispute process, there's another party that we haven't talked about here, and that's the private lenders that actually contributed the money in the first place, and the ones that they have the loan with, the mortgager there. And once you go into that formal dispute resolution process and we come out and we say, we hold you in breach, that goes to that senior lender, and they get very nervous when their money's at risk. And then it could cause a whole set of cascading legal things that We want to avoid if we can. So that's where we're saying, what other mechanisms can we put in place out here? And I've got a whole team in there trying to help me find those right now, to pour through these transaction documents and say, where else might we find a lever? Something to influence behavior if it's not going our way. Short of, let's walk in the room together and I'm going to pull a pin on the grenade and drop it. Now, at some point, you know, if things are that bad between us, that's the point we reach. I might as well pull the pin on the grenade. We may be getting close to that with Balfour Beatty, as you've heard in the news, and say we're kind of at the point where you're getting close to that cure notice, and you're getting close to that point where we walk in the room. So, but we hope we can find more tools and more mechanisms to influence behavior short of going there. But I can tell you there's a whole team helping me try to find those right now, and I'm very interested in finding them. I've only been doing this job for a year, so I'm not like the crusty person been doing this job for 100 years and I'm set in my ways. I want to find new ways if I can. I stepped in when things were starting to go south, and I said, well, why is it all going south out here? And to take a good hard look at this program, and there's lots of people like me and lots of folks at AVCAC and that are doing it. We brought in some outside experts to come in and help us to improve this whole program. But I hear you, and I can tell you that we are actually seeking all the possible levers and mechanisms within the transaction documents, and then where we might try to modify the transaction documents to just give us more. And of course, those will be negotiations, and those private lenders will want to be involved in that, because it affects potential money flow to them, the potential repayment of their loan. You know, they're great Americans, but you know, they're there to defend their investors, and that's going to be their interest when we go to talk to them. But we are working these issues, but I'm very sorry for the experience you've had, and I wish it never would have gotten to that point. We want to prevent repeats, and I'm committed to that along with my whole staff. And that's why I always tout that 1-800 number. If you call us, I am not in the project owner's camp. I am not. I will look at all sides of that issue. So one thing that we'll do is
Excuse me, General Panel. Sorry to interrupt, sir. The time is now 6:40, and we have time for just about 2 more questions.
So before I will do this, we will get the number out to the contact. We did it in previous town halls, but we'll make sure that as part of this, and we'll put it back out there so everybody has that number.
You're talking about the APCAC number, the 1-800 number?
Yes,
okay.
The 1-800 number.
But to Ms. Pisano's point, I wanted to say also that AFCAC can act when we have the data. So it's up to us to be diligent in our inspections and accountability, but also we need your help. When you have these experiences where it's bad contractors, or like you said, they did something that just didn't look right, and you look it up online, and maybe you could do it a different way. If you have a name and you have a company, and you put it in your resident survey, or you call us directly and let us know this was terrible, that's the kind of data that we need so that we can come back and hold them accountable. And it won't be overnight. I wish it was, but we have to show a trend, and we have to show, you know, this is repeatable offense, or this is repeatable actions that aren't effective. And then that's the kind of leverage that we have with AFCAC, and then they have that direct line to the vice presidents and those kinds of things. So there are some mechanisms that, again, weren't necessarily in place about a year ago that we have now.
Hi, so I have a couple questions from people who weren't able to attend today. Who is responsible for the pipes to the houses? People have been given multiple answers on that, and they wanted to know from the street or whatever to the house itself, whose responsibility is that?
So how's it going? So it depends. So our sanitary sewer is privatized. It's part of San Antonio River Authority. They own it. So we actually have a line of demarcation that they're responsible for up to a certain point, and then after that, it becomes, either the housing owner, the privatized housing owner from that perspective. So it depends, and so depending upon specifically what unit they're concerned about or where the leak is, we can work with Hunt and figure out actually who's responsible. So although Central River Authority is the privatized utility owner, similar with housing, they're responsible to me.
Okay.
So if they have to go fix something, I tell them to go fix it, and then they go get it done.
Okay, thank you. And then when is the next water testing supposed to happen? How many testings are you doing? Are they testing all models? And will the addresses be provided publicly?
Major Harrington here. So monthly there's already pre-selected spots that we test around the base, so it's pretty much the whole system. We don't go into your houses and test per se, but
That's
as far
the
as
once a year, correct?
Oh, excuse me?
That's the once a year where the resident submits it and places it outside?
Yes, so that is
Okay.
the lead and copper. So that's
Okay.
strictly testing for lead and copper, just to make sure that the levels are within range. So,
Okay.
and that typically, it's August when we come out. So currently we're on the annual schedule to do that. So we'll come out and do resample next August.
Next August, okay. One other fast thing, hopefully. For the people who have experienced reprisal or denial of issues and refusal to put that through or put that up the chain to people that it needs to go to, who can they go to? Because if they've gone to Hunt and they have gone to HMO, where are they supposed to turn when the dispute is not being resolved? Before going to legal necessarily. Like, what if they don't want to go down the legal path and they want to give them the chance to fix it and neither side is taking responsibility for it, I guess? And further, what happens when repairs have been made in those homes and it's actually damaged more in the home?
So the first question, hello, Cassandra.
Hello.
The first thing I would say is you have two options. You have our executive agent option, which is Colonel Jeff Carter and his deputy Charlie Haig at the very end here at the table. And the civil engineers work in a roundabout way through them, but they work for me ultimately. But they're the first line of defense, and then of course me and the chief. And we're here to help advocate for the folks.
What happens when people have experienced reprisal or pushback with those people? Who do they turn to after that?
With
you?
myself?
No, not with you. With people below on that chain coming up towards you. Are they allowed to speak to chief and then you and chief will discuss things?
Absolutely.
Okay, because we had several people asking.
Okay.
So.
Yes,
Awesome.
absolutely. And the second question was, remind me again, or the last question. I should
Which
say.
part?
You had two parts to your question.
If the repair does damage inside.
Oh, if the repair is worse.
Yes.
Made
Yes.
it worse. Again, I would report it to the MHO. First report it to Hunt and get it on record there. I'd report it to our MHO and make sure that they are doing something about it. And if the resident doesn't feel like they're doing anything about it, report it back up to the EA, come to us. That's.
Now, is there a way CE can look into that after you have reported it? Because several residents have reported
I see what you're saying. Okay.
that things haven't been taken care of to Hunt, and they were told, well, okay, that's fine, go to MHO. So they went to MHO, and MHO was like, we took it.
Great.
So
Question. Okay.
where does it go from there? Can CE step in at that
So
point?
yes, ma'am. So
Absolutely.
So one of the slides that you're going to see at the very end is going to be our contact info. So you'll have, outside of the military housing office, you'll have ultimately my number, my contact info, and you can get a hold of myself. You can get a hold of Joe Hockaday. So, and we have done this in the past where, again, if we believe that Hunt's not doing their due diligence, even from a technical perspective, we do bring in my staff to go in and make sure, are they really doing it correctly? We offer them assistance, offer them advice, and then tell them it's just not going to work, or you know what, yeah, maybe you're doing things good. So worst case, come to me, and if it comes to me, I can assure you we're going to get it done, because we have the capability within my organization. We have maintenance mechanics, we have plumbers, electricians, we do everything that a city does. So when it comes to capability, if I don't have it organically, I can get it inorganically. I can go get it from somebody else. So
All right,
give
thank
us
you.
a call.
I have some people that'll be pushed to you then.
Please do, not
Thank
a
you.
problem.
Thanks, Cassandra. Yes, ma'am.
Good evening. My name is Robin Howell, and I am Mary Beth's neighbor. I did come into the meeting late, so I apologize if I ask anything that's redundant. I just want to make a quick comment that concerned us. My husband came in the military late at 58. I'm proud of him going through officers training with all the other people that were our children's age. So we've been on the base for 3.5 years. We have loved being in the military. It's been a great honor. My husband's deployed twice, and we are actually exiting. In those 3.5 years, I have watched 3 neighbors move into this house. It's been Mary Beth's. My concern, without going into all of what y'all are obviously doing to try to rectify this, that convicted us, was that we watched the communication from Hunt actually be untruthful. I told her, I was the one that kind of came over and said, just make sure they fix things. I think they are depending on the fact that people rotate and move every, hour, year and a half, and there's not someone sitting there watching. But my concern, my greatest concern, not only everything they were witnessing and going through, is that she sent me a text when she had gotten a text from Hunt. I don't know who it was that said, she asked about what I told her, that the 2 previous families had left because of issues directly related to the house. And Hunt replied, oh no, they just PCS'd, it was fine. And that's untruthful, and at that point I knew something was up more than just inconveniences. And I actually was asked to call the 2 previous people, which I did, and the first one said absolutely that she had documentation, she had a child that was sick. Our concern, I guess, we've lived in the Texas Hill Country for a while, and so most of those houses are on septic. I don't understand, other than it's a great deal of money to come in and redo all your plumbing. But I put a new septic in, it's thousands. But that's something that I think everyone is voicing over and over again. Hunt has been very helpful to us, and I think to most people, if your garbage disposal comes out, they're not only there that morning, they can get it replaced. They can do a lot of very short-term fixes that work great, but something where they're not wanting to fork out the unnecessary money that no one wants to fork out. Yeah, a homeowner doesn't want a new septic system, but that's when the big things need to be done, they are being pushed and told it's not an issue. My husband's a physician, I'm a nurse. I haven't done nursing in a while, but when Mary Beth told me, I don't know if this was mentioned, that the mold person that came out said that they will treat for mold if they have 2,000, I don't know if it's parts per unit or what the unit is, but her home was 66,000 rather than 2,000 millimeters or whatever I don't know what the measurement is for that type of mold. They were also told that, I don't know if you said, Mary Beth, penicillus, it's we think of penicillin, but certain people that are allergic to penicillin are more sensitive to that, and so you might have one child that's sick, and this is just my surmise, I don't know if it's true or accurate, but why you can have one kid with respiratory problems and the other 2 people in the house are fine, but my main concern, I just wanted to say, is my husband, with the very first couple, it was a pilot who had taken a 18-month, willing to do that, and she had to move out the week before Christmas with 3 children by herself. And not only was she not paid a moving fee, all 3 of them were not assisted with their moving fee. She was, how there's a $200 requirement to clean your house, or you have to do it yourself. I can't, y'all will know what that is. That was not extended to any of these 3 couples, to not have to even pay that. So my husband went in for the first time to talk to Hunt because he was concerned that someone, new to the military said, these are the young people that are serving our country, and to have a pilot gone and realize his wife is moving out the week before Christmas with 3 children because something in the house isn't fixed and is making him sick. I think she has something. They both live off base, the previous 2 families, you see, but she said she would be willing to talk. But she did say that when they moved to another location immediately, her symptoms, she was sick as well, ended immediately. And we've heard that from each family that we've happened to have contact with. So there is a severe connection. I understand that there's a 50-year contract. I don't know why that can't be broken, just off the top of my head, and I'm definitely not a lawyer in any way, shape, or form, but where I guess my concern is the people that are directly relating to some of these wonderful people that are serving us, they're flat out being told it's not true. One example is I said, make sure you can lift up the trap door, and I'm almost finished. There's a little trap door in your closet where the water heater, and you can see if there's water under your home. Our first big flood, when we moved in, there was 2 feet of water. It was all clear. And they came in and pumped it all out, and we haven't had trouble with that since. But with the sewage and the stuff that's been going on for so long, I told Mary Beth, make sure you look up under the door, lift it up if it rains, and the previous owner was real concerned too, said, I'll talk to her. Well, about a week or so after they moved in, she said, well, my husband was going to check it, but it's been nailed shut. You can't check it. And I'm sorry to say those things, because those are the things that are alarm bells for someone older like I am. That's, we're still on base, and we have loved living on base. We will be exiting soon, but maybe sooner with what I hate to say that, someone, we it takes bravery, even at my age, I'm 61, to try to come forward and wonder where the problem is. But this is the frustration of, more than anything else, I would assume, is not just that it's not getting done, but when they're told something that isn't truthful. The last thing I would like to say is she herself warned. I opened my home a couple of weeks ago because they were going to interview her in front of her house because no one could go in, and someone wanted to interview her, and it was going to be freezing weather. And I said, just come sit at the dining room table and, use our house to talk to whoever you need to talk to. But it's just, I think that's our greatest concern, is that there's been untruthfulness to 3 families in a row that we know personally each time. And that is the big alarm system where the accountability needs to be. And I know it's not everybody at Hunt. I don't mean that. There's been people that have been helpful, but someone is allowed to get by over and over again telling these families something that isn't what actually occurred. Thank you for your time and your concern. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Robin. And thanks for your support to the Fasano family in particular, and to all the neighbors here. I do want to say that the system failed. We failed in the oversight part of that. I can't speak to all the facts, but trust me, this is on the top of my list. And we were just talking about it this morning before we came in here. Was digging into the history of the home and determining what we knew and what we didn't know, and then what Hunt knew and what they didn't know. So that's for us to dig into, but I do appreciate you bringing it forward tonight. And again, thanks for helping the family when they needed their help. I appreciate it.
We have time for one more question.
Okay, let me go ahead. It's still on, okay. So my quick question is, why are work orders success rates are based on how quickly they're finished? I feel like that's a big, you mentioned how quickly they were finished earlier about, they got them turned in really fast. I feel like quick fixes are not proper fixes, so why is a level of success in a work order based on the time frame of which it's fixed if it's something that's a larger issue?
So what you're describing is incentivizing a quick, maybe ineffective fix, but
Yeah.
you get credit for the fix. That's a great question, and that's something that we can take back to AFCAC and see what we can do to adjust that. Just that, like Mr. Graves said, we're looking at everything right now and what has been effective in holding our privatized owners accountable and what's less effective, and maybe incentivizing bad behavior.
And I'm sorry, I know I'm stealing one more question. Are PFOAs being tested on our base? I know that they are now on the map, in the water, the whole flame retardant spray. Is that being tested in our water supply
That is a
on Randolph?
great question.
For the PFOS before? Okay, so I can talk about PFOS before quite a bit, to be quite honest. That was my previous job for 5 years. So within JBSA, we do not have a PFOS before. So the whole PFOS before issue really stems from having what was considered the AFFF, or the firefighting foam, that was utilized in past activities, to where if they would get into the drinking water, whether it's surface water or aquifer or so forth. Within San Antonio, we actually, as part of the Air Force Civil Engineer Center, we have an entire organization from an environmental that just does that, environmental remediation. We have sampled stuff that's here within JBSA, and we do not have a PFOS PFOA issue in our drinking water. We have firefighting training facilities, but we do not have a PFOS PFOA issue. So like if you've seen in other cities across the United States, you can go to Colorado, you can go to Ohio, you can go to Alaska, where, no kidding, there is actual PFOS PFOA in people's drinking water, where the Air Force has had to step in and physically hook up the houses to an actual city water. We don't have that problem here within JBSA. That I'm confident in saying we don't have that problem.
One quick audible. I'm going to call on our PA folks. There's a gentleman in the back in the gray sweatshirt. You had a question? Come on up. Sorry, PA.
Sorry, everybody. Bill Morrison. I've been in our house since July 13, so we've enjoyed. I think we've been a lucky person to the house that we have. We do have some issues. You drill a hole in the wall, the drill bit comes out, and it's soaking wet because the brick underneath the outside stucco is wet. Now, we were at Pearl Harbor Hickam before we were here. They have historic homes there along the canal, and they gutted them. I worked construction before I got in the Air Force. All we're doing, excuse me, for the last 75 years, or the first 75 years of the home, the Air Force owned them. The last 15 years of the home, Hunts owned them. Now, they've probably been exponentially getting worse in those last 15 years, but I believe the Air Force gave potentially Hunt some lemons of homes. I own a home that was remodeled in 1970, so I still have the seafoam green, seafoam purple tile in the bathroom. I think what we need to do, if they were able to gut the homes in Pearl Harbor Hickam that were historic, and if they're able to gut the White House in the 1950s that is historic, we need to look at trying to budget to gut these homes. Now, when they gave me a new air conditioner, after 5 times the air conditioner died, and I looked inside the ductwork, it was black. You can go blow that out, but you can't get it completely clean. So if we gut these homes, we no longer have to worry about lead in the water. We no longer have to worry about mold in the ducts. We can build a protective barrier between the plaster lath, concrete interior, and that brick that's in between the outside stucco, to being able to make those houses breathe a little better because they're not made to have air conditioning. I think if we're able to get 16 houses off the market now, and Hunt is still surviving, we can be able to program houses to come off the market, gut them, and now give the airmen, I'm now retired, give the airmen that are coming up a modern home with a historic exterior. Because if we don't do that, we're going to continue to Band-Aid the fixes. The electrical is probably bad in these homes. The plumbing is bad in these homes. These homes move even after 90 years, so they're not sitting no longer on their foundation. The pipe work that's going into the ground is probably not connected anymore. Who knows what's underneath my house? Who knows what's underneath any of these houses? We're too afraid to go down there and look. I know I'm not going down there. But I think if we look at trying to budget, and we talk about budgeting, we budget 5-year plan for computers. We budget 10-year plans for aircraft. We budget all these things to modernize everything else except for the homes that we live in. I lived in a brand new home at Pearl Harbor Hickam. Luckily, I lived in a brand new home at Buckley, luckily. That was managed by, I think, Hunt or Pinnacle. They had their problems because they were brand new construction, and of course it goes to the lowest bidder. That's the way we do that. But until we look at a major solution to keep these historic homes in the modern times, I think we're still going to have these issues. And ma'am, your people that follow you and the rest of this council, we are going to be continually dealing with this because we're not fixing the problem. We're just putting a Band-Aid on it, and we're calling it good. They come out, they fix something, they call it good. They come out 5 times because that was their rule. 5 times your air conditioner breaks, then we'll replace it. That might not be the right answer when it's 102 in July and you need a new air conditioner now. We don't do that with our own cars. We don't do that with our own homes that you live in off base. We fix it to maintain it, to get it better than it was. Thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Bill. I know that's a big question or a big suggestion, and you're absolutely right. There's no doubt about it. But there's, I think it gets back into the financing piece of it. That's at the higher level at APCAC, and that would, I don't want to speak to the solutions, but you're right. I mean, that's what needs to be done, but it would require restructuring, and I don't know all the details behind what that would require. Mr. Graves is probably the right person or the right area to speak to that, if you have what that would entail.
It would, in this project, involve a restructuring, although this project is, there's 2 kinds of, I'm probably getting way too technical, 2 kinds of deals out there. There are equity deals in which the Air Force, in essence, gave cash equity into the deal, and you're kind of like a part owner, so to speak, of the limited liability corporation that was formed. And then there's government direct loan deals where where it was a treasury loan that stepped in. There's certain statutory language in the case of a government direct loan deal that prevents us from the Air Force from contributing money back into that deal. So this isn't the only place where we've given lemons. I don't necessarily disagree with you about giving lemons. You know, we gave 1,084 lemons at Keesler. We had homes that were constructed by Milcon at McDill that have no vapor barrier at all, sitting right on the water. And we built them, not the project owner, we did, and then conveyed them over. So these are areas we're looking at to say, okay, what are we going to do about the lemons that we handed over? Could we get maybe some, and this is where we're looking, where the senators and others have come forward and say, how can we help? Well, maybe we do need a little statutory relief. Maybe we need the ability where we handed them a lemon to be able to fix our lemon. And so in the case of this deal, it is an equity deal, and we may have the ability to actually put some money in there. These are things we're exploring. So we're not, it is a financing deal, and like I said, when we talked about the $4.9 million, they didn't really have that. We have to build that last $2 million just to finish that effort, but we see the rate of growth we're going to get there within the time frame that the work could actually be completed in. But when you talk a bigger effort like that, that's something that we really would have to sit down and project out for looking at, you know, a 5-year effort on how we're going to get there. But I can say we're having those discussions.
So what's going to happen in 40 years when time goes away from now, I think your bill is going to be much more in 40 years, because that's the contract. Unless we tell another contractor, hey, we're going to give you these homes, which are definitely not perfect, for you to manage again. So are we going to pay us now, or we're going to pay later, because these homes are going to eventually come back to the airports. Unless we figure out a contractual way to extend this and then give these to another company, and in 40 years, you're going to have another group of parents and another group of residents and another group of military members saying, you failed us again.
One of the things that's built into our financial modeling, what we do when we look at the reinvestment account and when we're going to actually restructure these, is we project out that at the 25-year mark of any home, whether it's a new home or whatever, we're going to have to go out and basically gut it and do a whole house renovation. That's built into our financial modeling. If there's not enough money to do that, that's where we start looking and saying, we need to restructure this, because even though they're okay right now, we've got a bill coming down the road here. If we don't do this, these homes are going to be in really horrible state. Those that are not historical that we moved over, we look, if that home is over 50 years old and it doesn't have historical status on it, to where the SHPA would be involved, that not only do we need to whole house renovate, we probably need to replace it and just build a new one. And so this is all built within the modeling that we do right now. And then we have a list of projects right now that we're working to restructure, because they can't even meet their debt, let alone maintain the home. And those are first on our plate, because if you're living at Scott, they are literally doing the leaking roofs right now. They don't have money to fully sustain the unit. They're about at 20% of what they need to sustain the houses there. And so we're looking at Scott, we're looking at Barksdale, Bowling, Langley project. It has significant problems. And this is another project that's on our watch list of those that just isn't financially where it needs to be. But we're trying to restructure them in a prior order, dealing with those that right now that just can't even maintain. And then moving on. And we expect, because of this effort to try to make sure that sufficient funds are going into maintaining and sustaining these units, that we're going to drive more of these projects to where we need to restructure them. And if that's the case, okay. Let's make sure the right amount of resources are going in there. If we have to restructure them so that that's happening, then we do that. And at the same time that we're restructuring them, we negotiate in some more powerful tools, because we're opening the deals up. And if I'm opening the deal up, let's restructure, let's put in some more powerful tools for us, while we got all the lenders and everyone else on board. And so there's a lot of work going on right now to look at all of these projects, including this one, and look at that long-term viability, and look at how we're going to reinvest in this unit and get down to root causes. Because that is certainly a problem that I've seen throughout the portfolio, of not doing root cause analysis on a problem, and I just treat the symptom and not what's causing it. So I do thank you for that input. I did write it down. I want to take it back and talk to our consultants on this. I have a team of consultants that help me on the financial side, and see what we might have to do with ATC 2. But I don't disagree with you that we've handed people lemons, and sometimes the only way to really address the lemon is tear it down into its roots and then fix it in a manner that keeps the state happy, because the outside of the house still looks the way it was, but we've put in the necessary systems and stuff to provide that the inside of that house is an environment like you'd find in a modern home.
Mrs. Alexander, ma'am, could you please see me after we conclude here? Thank you.
One question in regard to that, because Bill Morrison is also my neighbor, And I'm glad we're talking about the long term of it. But is there any direct chain of authority where number 3 house on our street is not rented to anyone again? It so happens, as y'all know, they're arranged very nicely where the backyards all kind of, they don't directly face them, but there's 5 in a group with most, is how this was done. All of the neighbors are here tonight, and none of us have had the issues that one house has had. We've had issues, and maybe I'm speaking out of term, but nothing like this 3 times in a row. And we're all sitting here in support of the Pisanos, but also the 2 people before. Is there anything that can't keep Hunt from, if they can't redo and re-gut a house and do the plumbing, where that one is shut down? I know someone mentioned earlier, like I said, I was about 30 minutes late, that some of them are not given a key. And the reason I'm bringing this up is not hypothetical. Mary Beth, and she needs to tell me if I'm wrong, but she said one day they were coming through to look, and she warned them. She said, you're supposed to wear a mask. We were told not to come in without some kind of aerating mask, and they just had the plain little masks that you put on that are the surgical ones for germs or whatever, and warned them. And they said, well, we're going to come on in. She said, well, my husband's just filming. He's coming in today too. He's going to film. And the people from Hunt were there. There were 2, and they said, well, we don't want to be filmed. And they said, well, okay. And so they didn't film them, of course, but they said absolutely nothing. But then to Mary Beth, they commented, one of them said, well, we need to see what's going on so we can rent it to the next family. And I just think that's one of the most heartless things of the things she shared with me. So that's what I'm talking about a direct where Hunt needs to be discussed, irregardless to the fact that a 50-year contract shouldn't be signed. I also know I heard that they let go of a couple people, and I hope y'all know, it's not everybody that works in any office is guilty, or they may be doing the right thing, but this has happened enough that there's a real problem with untruthfulness or an apathy of what she was going through. And that's the last thing I'd like to say. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Robin. I will take that one for action. We do have, we've asked Hunt that, well, we've said we need to walk through the house, we need to do our assessment, we need to have a third party come into that house in particular before it's ever rented out again. So we'll do our part. We will hold them accountable and won't let anyone live in that house until it's deemed safe and healthy. And if it means that no one's ever living in that house again, then so be it. Okay. Thank you. Thanks.
General panel, we have present closing remarks.
Sure. To all the ladies and gentlemen that came here tonight, thank you so much. Again, we appreciate every single one of you and every single one of your comments tonight. For those of you that did have taskers or gave us taskers, we will follow up on those. And also the folks that we owe information to, just make sure that we get your name and we understand how to contact you, especially if you're not living on the installation anymore. But you always have a direct line to us, to me in particular. I think one of our last slides is a contact. You can keep flipping a couple slides. I think it starts with Richard there at the top. I know the lights are up and it's hard to see, but we'll push these slides out too, so we'll push them out through Hunt, through their email system, but also we'll put them on Facebook. But the people up here, we care. We want you to live in a healthy and safe environment, and it's not necessarily going to turn over on a dime, but we do have a lot of tools in our toolkit now that we didn't have a little while ago, and we've got a great, passionate team that's committed to taking care of everybody here. So please speak up, let us know how we're doing, let us know what's not getting done, and we'll follow through and make sure that we partner to ensure you have a safe and healthy home. So with that, have a good evening and happy holidays, and please, again, thank you all for coming.